So earlier today, Satanic Yosef sent me a message and asked me what I thought about the relationship or contrast between archetypes, Jungian archetypes, and Dawkins' notion of memes, because on the surface they seem pretty similar, that they're both this psychological, mental, cultural thing that explains how ideas are exchanged and propagated through the human community. But we go a little bit deeper than that, and they're really quite different. So Dawkins' idea of memes is basically it's based on his idea that genes are the basic units of evolutionary selection, and that memes are like units of thought, much like genes are units of genetic expression. And so a meme, a unit of culture, an idea, basically infects its host, and if it's an especially um, adapted meme to its particular environment and it finds a niche, it will propagate itself very quickly. And it's not really the person or the people that are choosing this meme. The meme sort of has its own fitness, and it looks out for its own good, and it wants to spread much like genes would want to spread. Archetypes are Jung's idea of an unconscious structuring principle. Jung called his psychology analytic psychology because the basic philosophy in which he started his analysis of psychology was Kantian, and the idea that Kant had of time and space being these sort of innate qualities of the human mind that structure our experience, and that we can't come to understand the world without these innate um, sort of laws of the mind, or we could call them archetypes, these innate structuring qualities. And in other words, we can't perceive anything without assuming time and space. Otherwise, nothing that we experience out here in the world makes sense. So Jung took this idea and certainly made it more complex and said, look, there's a lot more archetypes. There's, the archetype of birth and death. And, if you look at tarot cards, each card, the wise man, the fool, they all represent certain archetypes. And so every archetype has a symbol, because most of the archetype is in the unconscious, the collective unconscious, which for Jung wasn't just this spiritual psychic realm of the soul or anything like that. He said, no, this is definitely grounded in the biology of the organisms, and that all animals and all life and even matter and energy themselves express these archetypal principles. And so Jung's real motivation was to unify our understanding of the mind and the body, and to say that, look, the body isn't just material, the psyche isn't just spiritual. There's a connection and a relation between the two. And when I think about Dawkins' distinction between genes and memes, I see the same old Western Cartesian dualism between mind and body. Mind, meme, body, gene. And I don't see how memes arise atop the genetic physical structure of the body. I'm assuming that Dawkins would say it's just the nature of human language. It sort of takes over, and it acts as a virus, forming ideas that just propagate themselves, and we aren't really, as biological organisms, in control of what our culture does. Jung would say that, okay, so the archetype for Jung is the collective unconscious, and then the complex would be my personal unconscious. So there's an archetype for mother, the mother, say, the female, feminine archetype, and I have my own personal complex that's roughly based on that archetype that I have developed throughout my life and my own experience with my mother and the mothers that I have encountered in my life. And so my personal complex seems a little bit more like what Dawkins talks about when he refers to memes. And they are, memes would be an unconscious type of a unit, because we don't think that we're thinking with the memes. We don't choose the ideas that we like because we do think that we choose the ideas that we like, right? We don't uh, feel victimized by our thought processes, and that the frameworks and ideas that we take on as our own are in control of that process. I mean, we feel like we have a say. And Jung leaned more in that direction, in the sense that, even though my personal complexes are also unconscious, they are no way separate from my being, my total, full psychic being, which is not to say just my mind, but my whole human being. And so, in general, I think Jung's notion of archetypes is a little bit less dualistic. I mean, certainly Kant and the analytic school of philosophy was, in some sense, still positing a separation between mind and body. Kant was all about universal rationality and the idea that there could be this disembodied reason that was the same in every individual and that would tell them, how they should act morally and so on and so forth. And that seems sort of untenable today based on what we know about the brain and the way cognition works. But even so, towards the end of his life, Jung was starting to move away from that idea of analytical psychology in the sense of the Kantian tradition, and he really wanted to say that archetypes aren't just in here, in my psyche. They're part of the structure of existence itself, out there and in here. And he used the analogy of the electromagnetic spectrum, in the sense that visible light is conscious and we can see it, but then the infrared portion of the spectrum is invisible, and yet it still exists and it still plays a causal role in the unfolding of existence. And so to say that archetypes or the visual spectrum is only in here and that it doesn't extend out into the world in this infrared portion of the spectrum, the analogy being archetypes aren't only in here, but they extend out into the world itself. It's just the way we structured our experience culturally has tended to deny that there could be any type of intelligence like that out there, which I think Dawkins' ideas sort of support that separation, that memes are a function of language, and the language is sort of disembodied and it's not organic. It's separate from the genes, and it does its own thing. And I think Jung was trying to bridge this gap. And this might have been a little convoluted and confusing, but hopefully I made some sense. Because it's a difficult issue to deal with, to really differentiate these ideas. So anybody that thought I missed the mark or has any additions or suggestions, please let me know, because I'm really interested in understanding the difference between these two ideas myself. So thanks for listening.